Alrighty, let's kick this off because this one is a doozy. It's sacred spots defining heritage in skate culture. So first up, Stuart is one of the organisers of Pushing Borders and works full-time on the Long Live Southbank campaign, which successfully saved the world-famous undercross spot in London from redevelopment. Please welcome Stuart Maclure. Brian is a skater and filmer from Philly who was an integral part of the Love Park skate scene for nearly a decade as part of the Sabotage crew. Give it up for Brian Panebianco. Pollyana is a senior lecturer in media and communication at the University of Sussex, focusing on the media's role in social and political change. Dr. Pollyana Ruiz. Next up, Paul is a research assistant professor in sociology at Lingnam University in Hong Kong and has a book called Skateboarding and Religion coming out later this year. Please give it up for Dr. Paul O'Connor. And your chairs for this fabulous discussion. As I said earlier, Gustav is the official skateboarding coordinator for the city of Malmo and organizer of Skate Malmo Street, who kindly invited us here, and we're stoked to be here. And stoked to have him on the panel. Please welcome Gustav Eden, everybody. And joining him in the chairing duties, Betsy is a project manager at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. and has curated numerous exhibitions about skateboarding. She's currently working on a book about the Smithsonian skateboarding collection. Please welcome Betsy Gordon and your panel.
Okay, so I think we also have to really give a big shout out to Phil, who does the most amazing intros ever. So can we just say, and introducing Phil! Oh! So this panel on skateboard culture and heritage, it's interesting because we've been talking as a panel about well, what are we gonna talk about? There's a lot to talk about when you talk about heritage and skateboarding. I mean, are we gonna be talking about what I do, which is kind of put stuff in museums? Are we gonna talk about archiving? Are we gonna talk about all the documentation that happens in skateboarding? Skateboard films, books, and the answer is, yeah, we could, but we're not. We're actually talking about something which is a little bit more slippery. You know, you can hold a book, you can go to a museum and see a skateboard exhibition. We're talking about skateboard sites. We're not talking about skate parks. We're talking about these places that are made sites, and in certain cases, sacred sites, that skaters discover, use, make. And we have an incredible panel to do this. Every time we've gotten together to talk about what we're going to talk about, we go on and on and on about, well, we could talk about this, and it's so fascinating. So it's going to be really challenging for us to get it all talked about. I'm wondering if the panel can just go and introduce yourself again, but tell us why you're here in terms of skate culture and heritage.
So, my name's Pollyana. I work at Sussex University. Is that better? Okay. And I suppose my research doesn't look directly at skate culture, so I kind of came at this sideways. So my research really looks at protest movements and how they use digital networks. And I came in as part of a kind of academic collaboration. So there was me from media, there was a historian, a cultural studies scholar, and an urban planner. So we had really different perspectives and loads of tensions between us, good tensions, productive tensions, about how you would begin thinking about the Long Live Southbank campaign and the Undercroft in particular. And so our kind of came in about thinking about place, really. What is it about that particular place, the Undercroft, that is so special, that would motivate people to put in so much time and effort and energy into preserving it? What is it that makes that space unique, makes it unreproducible, makes it something that should be preserved for future generations? And then how did that community tell other people who don't get it what is so special about that space. So that was really our into the project, and we thought it would be quite a quick project, and here I am 5 years later, still really, really interested in it, still more and more fascinated by it all, and hopefully I might be here in another 5 years, who knows?
Hello. I guess what brought me here is skating, essentially. Always skated, and I always knew that I wanted to study geography. I had an amazing geography teacher at school, Mr. Robertson, big up. And yeah, so I knew I wanted to do that at university, which I did. I studied planning policy specifically, and then I moved to Denmark to study urban design and architecture there, which was massively kind of influential in my understanding about like Scandinavian design and humanist architecture. Came back to London and then moved to San Francisco and worked in a urban planning like policy think tank, which again was very influential in how we think about policy development and architecture. And whilst I was over there, we were preparing for the new campaign because I wasn't heavily involved in the original campaign to save the Undercroft because I wasn't living in the country at the time. But when I came back, I was like, yeah, I'm down to volunteer, just like calling up skate shops, trying to shot books to them all. So it was like 6 months. It was like, do you want to buy a book? No. Anyway, so then, yeah, we started the campaign to restore the little banks, and then, yeah, it took 3 years and worked with Pollyana a lot about heritage, and she just taught me a lot about kind of different understandings about shared experiences. And yeah, and then we decided to do this.
Not everyone might know what the campaign is. If you want to explain that.
There's a place called Southbank. It's really fun to skate. We like it a lot, and we raised some money to make it bigger again, is the short story.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm very happy to be back. I'm Paul O'Connor. How did I get here? I guess the best way to start explaining this is I'm a sociologist of religion. So I've been studying religions as part of my academic career, but I'm also a skateboarder. I've been a skateboarder since I was 11 years old, since I was a kid. I guess I aspire to be a skate rat, but in truth, I'm probably more of a skate hamster. I'm not, you know. So I wanted to do something different, take a break from some of the things that I was studying, and I wanted to do something close to home. So I decided to look at skateboarding and skateboarders. Very much like Indigo, who did work on middle-aged skateboarders, I did the same kind of research, but rather than looking at media, I did ethnographic work, talking to people about their history, kind of biographies in skateboarding. One of the questions that I would ask people is, what does skateboarding mean to you? And, you know, talking to people who spent 20, 30 years skateboarding, this was actually a really big question. And I had both men and women who would tear up at this question and find it a really emotional question to be asked. And so part of what I learned from them was the importance that they had in terms of their affinity with their boards or their videos, their sticker collections, and also space. You know, the places that we talk about. I mean, Southbank and Love Park, these are great places, and I think we all recognize the kind of gravitas of these locations, what they mean through media. But then probably all of you also have a connection to your local curb or a local spot as well, and it means something to you because you've spent so long there. So in kind of connecting that to religion, and I'm kind of being provocative by talking about religion, I realized the other day when religion came up in one of the forums, people were quick to jump on the separation between church and skate, as one of my participants talks about it. But the way I'm talking about religion in skateboarding is that for me personally, skateboarding has given me like a physical outlet, a kind of spiritual outlet. It's given me a text. It's given me a ritual process, and it's also given me a community. And so that's how I'm connecting it to what we're discussing today. So, thank you.
Hello. My name is Brian. I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm here to talk about Love Park and my time spent there. And brief history, Love Park was built in 1969, I think. Skateboarders found it in the early 80s, and then around 1999, it was banned. Skateboarding was banned in Philadelphia. It was illegal to skate there. In 2002, they partially renovated it to try to block skating. They put benches in front of certain ledges, and they had 24-hour police. So that was during my childhood, is when I was watching the old videos, Josh Kalis, Stevie Williams, everyone skating it. And then in 2008, when I was old enough to skate there, the security backed off a little bit, and we jumped in there and we got rid of some benches and made it a little more skatable. And I pretty much skated there until 2016 when they tore it out. And when I first started skating there, I filmed a little bit, and this place that we were skating made me realize someone had to document it, and that's when I started taking filming more serious. And we made a couple videos from pretty much all filmed at Love Park, all the way up until the end. So that's pretty much it.
Well, we very deliberately have 2 academics and 2 skaters on the panel. Actually, 3 skaters. So, Paul, you are a hybrid academic. Oh, okay, all right, never mind. We have amazing people on the panel. They're all skate gods. All right, let's just take that. And what I did want to pivot to Pollyana and to Paul about, as academics, that type of thing, maybe a new language, maybe a new research protocol or not, when you have to or want to research skateboard heritage. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think I'm not a skater, so, and I really notice it's like become a little kind of motif through the conference. The people who don't skate always begin, I'm not a skater. And so for me, coming into this was really a massive learning curve. And we had, within our kind of academic group, we had a historian who's used to doing research in a particular way about place, and is used to doing particular kind of methodologies about that. And I'm a cultural studies scholar, so I have a really different approach to looking at space and a different way of doing research. So we had real questions about how to begin this project. How would you begin? And the historian was thinking, right, well, we'll go to archives, we'll get data from this place and this place. And my kind of perspective was, well, we'll just go and talk to the people. We'll ask them what they think. And this started us off on a track of thinking, what do we mean about history? When we talk about the history of a place, whose history are we talking about, and how do we define that history? And so there was a real tension within our group. Again, like I say, a good tension about what is heritage and how we think about it. And if you think about kind of public debate around heritage, it's normally around kind of buildings, the bricks and mortar of a place. This is a castle where this person lived, or this is the site where that happened, or kind of famous top-down history, traditionally. And as I say, that's based really on thinking about the bricks and mortar of a place. And if you look at the Southbank, that whole area, there is a really rich, well-documented history there. But I suppose there is a push in heritage discourse to think beyond the place and to start thinking about what happens inside those places. What do people do in those spaces? And how can we think about that as a kind of intangible type of heritage? And within kind of heritage discourse, that tends to be based around ritual. So it might kind of tie in with some of your thinking around kind of religion in some ways. But what there wasn't at that time was a sense of thinking about heritage as being really kind of ephemeral and everyday. So the stuff that happens, the activities that happened in a space. And so our research project really became about that. It became about thinking, yes, of course, that Undercroft is a unique physical material space, but actually the kind of heritage that we were really interested in and the kind of jargon, the language that we developed around it was a way of trying to pull out what happens in that space that is so precious. And so we're interested in the fabric of the building, the stones, the slabs, everything, but we're actually interested in the bits that aren't there, the bits that have been nicked away by skateboards, the marks, the traces of people in that space. And that's a really different way of thinking about history. It's a really different way of thinking about heritage, and it's a way of explaining perhaps to people who don't necessarily get skating why it's important, why it's of value for a wider community, and why those spaces need to can't just be moved from one place to another place, and why they have value that should be held forward for the future. And I think the kind of second thing that we really got from that, we kind of arrived, and I apologize in advance, in a slightly kind of patronizing academic way that we would help Long Live Southbank with their campaign. We would help them out by speaking for these young people. And like in 2 minutes, it was clear that like they speak perfectly well. They don't need 4 academics who know nothing about skating to come and like speak for them. So our in was not about helping people speak. Our in was about helping policymakers who don't get it to listen and to be quiet. And actually, I was saying before that 3 times out of 5 in a conversation that I'm having around this project, I realize that the best thing I can do is be silent and let somebody else speak about it. So it's a way of thinking both about heritage, how we think about heritage, and also who is the expert, who knows about this heritage, and who can speak and who can't speak. And so that's kind of the research that we've brought to this.
Okay, talking about it academically, when I was doing my research, I wasn't really thinking about heritage in the sense that Pollyana has just eloquently described. I guess, to begin with, academic work is heritage. You build on existing work. That's why my work, my initial explorations into skateboarding are hugely influenced by Ian Borden, Ocean Howell, who've looked at Love Park and looked at the idea of space. So that's a kind of the beginning of how you sort of engage in a research project. You look at what happened first. And then I wanted to sort of connect with what else is out there. How else can we think about space, and how else can we understand it, like the emotional idea of space, the kind of ritual content. Kind of the second way to think about heritage, what I take from it, and what I find interesting about this discussion is that the intangible side of skateboard heritage is hard to know, I think, for outsiders, what skateboarders want, because the space doesn't have to remain static, and that's like the traditional ideas of conservation and heritage, where you hold on to something and you preserve it. Well, Southbank doesn't need to stay the same, Love Park doesn't need to stay the same, but there is an attachment to the place and the meaning and the community that's there. That's the intangible stuff. That's the kind of cultural element that people really are passionate and really care about. So that's what I've been interested in trying to understand these sacred places. And what is interesting, if I take like kind of the sports sociology, the kind of idea, the academic work on sports, which skateboarding gets pulled into sometimes erroneously, people might argue, is that when you look at sports sites, they're deliberately constructed. You create a stadium, you create a tennis court, you create a football pitch or a racetrack, whatever it might be. The skateboarding sites are hidden in plain sight. They're street spots that other people use and are often unaware of the emotional content, the traces of life that have been left there, the wax, the scrapings, wall ride marks. And skateboarders, when they walk around a city, I mean, I'm talking to the crowd that already know this. When you walk around a city, it's really delightful when you can see where other skaters have been, because you see their traces. So that's tangible heritage, but the other side is that a lot of people don't recognize that meaning because they use these spaces in kind of mundane settings. The thing that I will, that I will use is a quote been used many times before, but this idea that skateboarders bring love to unloved places. And I think that that's kind of like the significant thing, is that this is what you use in the Southbank argument, is that no one really wanted that space. No one really cared about that space. And skateboarders made that space. And that's how I connect with heritage.
Thank you. Wonderful. So it's very interesting to me because I am all about the tangible and taking things and then preserving them and making them, you can't touch them anymore, and we put them behind glass, and we put them in a storage area. So for me, this is yet another dimension of heritage, this sense of sight and space. I'm wondering if we can talk to you, Stu, and Pollyana, about specifically, you can't move history. That sense of, yes, you might be able to replicate Southbank, but it wouldn't be the same because it didn't have the patina and the layers of all the emotion and history and blood and sweat.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it when you look at the layers of paint there. Like when we took down the wall, the paint was thicker than the plywood. Like, it's mad, it was like this thick. And that's just from 2004. But yeah, it's like the Rattray blunt on the 7, that DC ad, like, it's those kind of, talk a lot about like shared memories, shared understandings of that space that, I mean, it's just simple. You can't move history because you can't spatially move something that is like centered in time. So you just can't do it. Which was why it was a really easy kind of campaign line, because it's quite straightforward when you say it out loud. But the interesting thing about some of the work we've been doing recently about like preparing for the exhibition that we had right before Malmo was exploring that past that we write about all the time and get quite bored about looking at the same photos sometimes, but it enabled us to talk to a pan-generational group of people that we hadn't talked with in a few years. So we reopened conversations with Dennis Crompton, like the original architect from the 60s. Like, he's like a hero of mine. Archigram is a massive inspiration to us. And yes, my man. And it's the same with like the older generation and like Don Bryder, that footage. Steve, we need to do something with that soon of the 1988 jam. We open up these new lines of conversation and then we create a pan-generational community that is really strong together. And I think I've been really excited by this like strengthening of our community through exploring that time. And yeah, you can't move it, but when you do start thinking about that and talking about it with other people, it then like solidifies it even more. Yeah, and to be honest, like that skate park that they proposed was pretty sick. Like, it looked really fun, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I kind of like would have preferred to skate that, like objectively, but then obviously I wouldn't have. But that wasn't the point. It was like 100 meters down the road, but so different at the same time. I don't know, it's hard to put into words. Yeah, Pollyana?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things with the you can't move history thing, was that you completely understood that. But we interviewed, for example, directors of the Southbank Centre and talked to them about it. And they acknowledged it themselves after the kind of first wave of the campaign that was about saving the space, but before it became about extending the space. And they said kind of we had a blind spot. We just couldn't see what was happening in the Undercroft. And I think that's such an interesting thing, because you have a whole site there where you have the National Theatre Company, National Theatre, you have the BFI, you have all of these big national sites of culture. And here was a kind of organic culture that had come up, which these big institutions, which really care. I don't think the Southbank Centre just didn't care. Most big organisations like that would have most likely kicked the skaters out and not even bothered to talk to them or to offer a different site. So it wasn't a lack of care on their part. It was that they just didn't recognize this particular value. They didn't get, I think that point about generations is really important. They just saw a group of young people, a kind of anonymous young people. The idea that there could have been a kind of intergenerational exchange of histories going on there, that there were complex different groups of people with different sets of value. The idea that you could see skating as a kind of artistic expression, not dissimilar from ballet going on or concertos or whatever, kind of had escaped them. And once they saw it, they absolutely got it. But God, did you have to work hard to make them see it? And so I think in some ways that's a really interesting thing to think about, in that we've talked a lot in this conference about the stories that people tell, and often it's the stories that the skate community tells within itself. Sometimes with this kind of thing where you're needing to engage with policymakers, with planners, with funders, there's also a question of the stories you tell to the people outside who aren't going to get it intuitively, who are going to need it explained to them, and the language, the kind of translations you need to make. So patina would be a way an archivist might see it, but you might think of it as vibe or feeling or emotion. We're kind of talking about the same thing. We're just using different stories, different languages to tell different stories.
Yeah, I think like that's why, like Louis, especially, anyone that knows Louis, it's like the best person ever. He's like the person at Long Southbank that's been like the heart and soul of it from the very beginning. He wrote those heritage reports to present. He spent a year writing that heritage report, and it was a collection of quotes from members of the public, from politicians, from BMXers and architects and everyone, to just lay it out as like, this is the significance of this space. Here is a link to videos from every decade since it got built. Here is, it was massive. It was a huge piece of work. And like you said, sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, pat yourself on the back, like we're all skaters, like we all know this thing. But to actually get people to listen, you need to break it down and be really simple about it, but also very like comprehensive.
Yeah, and maybe to realize that the people you're talking to might not look on YouTube, it might not occur to them. So I remember talking to a director who said, oh, how do you know all of this stuff? And I said, well, it's on Instagram. And he was like, oh, I'll have to get someone to monitor that. So it's like, often like they just don't speak YouTube. They're looking for it to come in an email in a particular format. And I think the amazing thing about the Long Live Southbank campaign was they got the Southbank Centre, you taught them YouTube, you taught them how to speak a different language, and that worked. And that's a really rare and amazing thing.
Yeah, credit to Henry. It was Henry's vision, and he smashed it. He's an amazing videographer, and he used that, well, he says in the documentary, like he uses that idea of a hip-hop battle, like Dear Jude, that one video, it just says open your eyes with Nelly, and I can't remember who else is doing that, Wally. But yeah, it's just like that simple. It's making it really straightforward, but also using these mediums that we as skateboarders are very familiar with and talented with, and using that to our advantage, rather than a massive fucking organization that has X amount of funding from all these places. It's just like, right, well, we all know how to use a camera, we all know how to skate, and we all know how to write. I don't know, it can be quite simple when you just take a step back and like play to your strengths, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds simple in retrospect, and it sounds simple because we know they won, but at the time, of course, it was quite agonizing in many ways, and thinking about the kind of link into mental health, any type of activist work, particularly if it's, I think, activist work that you are kind of deeply emotionally connected with, is really, really hard. It's hard work, and there's a toil to that. And it can often be kind of quite a small number of people doing a huge amount of the lifting on it. And I think it was an amazing campaign. It's had an amazing outcome, but it's quite easy to celebrate that to an extent where you erase the difficulty, the struggle that was involved in that, and the cost to people.
Thanks. That's really, we can really chew on these things, can't we? And I want to, and this is not a typical contrast and compare because, Love Park, Southbank, I don't want to say, well, one won and one lost. They're very different types of community politics around them. But I do want to take a little bit of a hook of this you can't move history and talk about Love Park, but talk about Love Park Malmö. And I want Gustav and Brian to kind of talk about some of the terms that you can use are repatriation, you can talk about replication, and this is skateboarding, so it's not going to fit into those boxes. So I really want you to talk about Malmö and Love Park.
So when I first heard about this, Love Park was still there, and we were skating it. And I heard some of the granite was going to go to Sweden, and my first reaction was like, "What? Why? What the hell's it going to do there?" And then,
Fair question.
and yeah. And then I met Gustav in Philadelphia after it was like partially destroyed, right? When you came.
Yeah, it was
pretty
mostly
much
gone, but yeah.
Yeah, so I met him, and he explained to me how his vision and how he wants this to be a partial replica downtown in the city, which is exactly what we were looking for in Philadelphia, but everything we do, they say no. It can't be downtown, it can't be in the city, and it was almost impossible to save all the granite. So...
Didn't they want to grind up the granite?
They destroyed a lot of it, yeah. And I wasn't really worried about that. I was more, because that's a stressful job, just even try to figure out how to save all the stuff. And there was people doing it. And I was really just worried about documenting it to the end as much as possible. So we would steal like tiles and stuff here and there for our own pleasure, but...
But you were there with a marker, Like when they were tearing it down and you got the...
That was in the middle of the night after a long day. The fence is up around the park. It's a construction site. I just thought one day, like, I should jump in there and just measure everything in case someday they really do a one-to-one, like, rebuild of it or a partial rebuild of it. So I had this, like, piece of mail with, like, measurements written on it that I brought to you. And... yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're talking about with Southbank and how normally you put cultural heritage and you take physical objects and you move them into a context where they can be saved and preserved and like you were saying, you take a museum and you put glass around it so that it is saved forever. But our cultural heritage is always interactive. It's always a chronology of. It's not just the space. It's like who did what there, and that's what builds the significance and who wore what there, etc. Like so. For me, my perspective is, I have an ocean between me and Love Park, and I'd never gone there. But to me, the significance of that space and Embarcadero and Southbank in these iconic spaces is that they are, they have an aura and a cultural significance, which is that they are. You've had so many ideas about those spaces from studying tricks that have been done and people who have done them and their styles and their fashions and so on. It creates this kind of imaginary construct which has extreme significance to you. What is Love Park like? Actually, how rough are the bricks at Embarcadero? And with Love Park, after Embarcadero went, that's like the most significant skate spot in the world in my mind. And as a skateboarder, you don't want to go and see that in a, oh, look, that granite looks porous. You want to experience the feel of the grind on your setup. You want to feel the tiles. You want to you want to see what you could do there, because obviously the ego is involved as well. And so I think everybody, like to us over here, like we in Europe and these places where you never had the chance to visit Love Park, you build up this what if kind of amazing. It's like going to Mount Everest or something, you know. It's like it's on your bucket list and you need to experience it. So when Love Park was being torn down, and we saw reports from your Instagram and from wherever it's actually happening. I think the whole skate world, the reactions we saw online is that, okay, we're losing that chance to experience that thing on your bucket list. We're losing the opportunity to engage with our heritage, and all those potential experiences are being lost. Not just the actual heritage, because that's, in part that's been preserved through media, but all the potential future histories that we were talking about are being lost. And so I guess I thought that because I have a City of Malmö email title, if I contact the City of Philadelphia, it'll be very different than if a skater does it. So I essentially called the switchboard and asked what's happening with Love Park. Can we preserve some of it for to kind of save this potential experience for future generations? And I was put in touch with this amazing guy, Bob Allen. Can we give a hand to Bob Allen, actually? Yeah, Bob. But he was a worker for the City of Philadelphia, and he was like, oh yeah, the skaters have they have an organization, they've managed to save some of the granite, which I later found out was you, you and with the organization have been in there to like spray marks to save the slabs and try to save the fountain. So that, a lot of that granite was in storage already. And long story short, we worked with the city, and they were like, well, it technically kind of belongs to the skaters. And I knew Chris Mulhern, who's a filmer from Philly, and he knew you. And from our perspective, the most important thing was obviously that this is not, Malmö has no claim to Love Park. Like, no one except the Philly skaters have claim to Love Park. It's your heritage, you've created it. And this is about a homage to the cultural significance that you have achieved through skating Love Park and creating the space and creating this iconography that I guess, I'm not sure that's you can use the right term later. But the significance that has been massively important to us without even having been there. And so we were really worried about doing it the wrong way. So that's when I guess we were in touch with Chris, and then discussing with you, like, would this be a cheesy project, or would you feel like there was a legitimacy to, if we do it to scale, if we do it the right way, would that be something that you would be down with? And then I guess that's how we got in touch and started that conversation. But yeah, and then we shipped it over.
What do we think will happen?
All right. Well, I guess I'm doing the whole story now. So the challenge.
Want to know?
Yeah. So with the idea of Love Park Malmö is to preserve. If it's not possible to do anywhere else, and we can do it here, Malmö is a city that has obviously become a skateboarding destination through the collaboration between the city and the skaters, and we have an option to do this and create this cultural heritage here and make it a site for all those people who have Skating Love Park on their bucket list. But also it's interesting to show like who is a user group in a city, who has value, who's a constituent, who is allowed to take space. And so we wanted Love Park definitely not to be sealed in, but to be a interactive monument. And I haven't heard of any of those. There probably are, but a monument that is ephemeral is kind of a contradiction in terms, but the idea is to have a monument that gives significance to the Philly skaters' heritage by making it accessible to the whole skateboarding world that feels an emotional connection to this space. And if you can't do it in Philadelphia and we can do it here, it's better that it happens than that it doesn't happen.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm looking at our notes from when we talked, and there was one thing that you said, Paul, that I really liked when you were describing Gustav coming into, I think, the warehouse, and you said it was crazy heritage. He was taking the trash cans. So I like the idea of crazy heritage. Why don't you talk about that?
So pretty much, usually if you look at something in a skate spot, and it's getting torn down, you want to save something, you save what was skated or what's important, like the ledges or whatever, the rail. And when he came in, we were loading huge, how big do you think those things are, 24-foot light posts onto a truck to get shipped, and about 2 trash cans, big trash cans, they're heavy.
Ricky Oyola ollied the 2.
Yeah, those
so
are them.
That has to be, you have to be able to do that. It has to
So,
be the
yeah.
actual trash cans.
Yeah. And that's why I was so for the project, because he understood what was important. Like the light posts, the lights aren't even that good, they suck. But the fact that if you film something there and they're just in the background, or just, it gives you the feel, it's like, it's not really a replica of love, it's an echo, you know?
Yeah. Great, echo, I like that word.
I think, for the maybe people in the audience who don't necessarily know the history of Love Park so much, but it was, it's a granite square was in the heart of Philadelphia, like you said, that was discovered by the skaters. But there was also, a historical context where a massive focus in the skateboarding world was at Philadelphia and Love. And it'd be really interesting to hear about what that era meant to you, like with growing up and watching Philly and then becoming a part of that scene, like what significance that had to you.
Yeah, just all the old footage, and just like we used to just pause stuff and just look at things in the background of the footage, just like, and we knew you weren't allowed to skate there, and like, so the police footage was so interesting to us too, just like hearing how there's undercovers at somewhere where you go skate. When I think I was like 14 or 15 when I was watching these videos, so to experience it just felt like a jump back into these videos, and to be able to film and try to make it look like the old videos, just using the same camera. And that's where the clothing style came in, where just like people started dressing just like 1999 and 2003 or whatever, just because of a skate spot. Like, it's pretty crazy.
So why is that important? Why can't you wear like a suit and or like tight pants, or like a punk rock style at Philly or at Love?
To me, as a filmmaker, if you want to call me that, but if you put the footage all together, it blends seamlessly. It's the same camera, it's the same spot. The only difference is that people have iPhones in the background, and
so it's like continuing a heritage.
Exactly. Yeah, and the only difference really is when they put like pink planters in front of some of the ledges, and we would even avoid those areas just to not even show that, just to like, because it didn't fit the park, so it changed the look of it.
So, but that's now also become, you revisiting the old fashions from Love has now become re-fashion in a way.
Yeah.
So how did that come about, and what's the story behind that?
I don't know. It's just like, just growing up watching that stuff. Like, everyone who skates EMB like wants to be like Mike Carroll and like, you know, Chino or Chico, and like, so just, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how it happened, and some people move forward and like I don't know. I filmed Mark Suchu do a shit ton of stuff there, and some people said it was weird that he was skating there, you know. I don't know. I thought it was fine. I'll film anyone there, but yeah, it's a weird question.
I think there's a separate category for the desire to watch Mark Suchu footage, even if it's at Love, like with the wrong clothes. But I mean, aren't the yeah. Different heritage story, but isn't, I mean, those DC shoes are like new now,
Yeah,
right? They're a reissue.
They are a reissue. of a shoe that was out in 1998 to 2003, I think, which most people love in the old videos were skating. So it's pretty crazy. It's a little late. I was getting them off eBay, and they were falling apart. Could have used them a couple years ago, which have been 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
So it's good that they're coming back. But that's
It is
kind of
cool,
like,
yeah.
so you're both like, by preserving a cultural memory anyway, you're also recreating a cultural significance, like, because by that now being a priority for them to produce that shoe, it's also like has proven that creating that story, you know, would also restate the story of Love Park for future generations and so on. It's like, I mean, that ties into how we talk about cultural narrative, I suppose, and how stories are what create value. And I mean, in skateboarding, those stories are obviously filmmaking and how you document your skateboarding, obviously.
What's interesting as a historian is that skateboarding, let's just say let's maybe agree, and who knows when anything really begins. But let's place the dot at maybe 60, 70 years ago. And then you can disagree with me after the talk, okay? But so, I come from an institution that has, asteroids that are older than our Earth and dinosaurs. And so 60 years is kind of not a big deal for the Smithsonian. But nonetheless, you're preserving memory and you are creating a sense of value. And so much of what we do here on this panel, whether you're talking to city planners or I'm talking to curators that don't think skateboarding is important, is that we're creating value. Perhaps citing history, perhaps keeping tradition alive, as in your shoes. And I mean, that's something that I think skateboarding is getting more interested in, is sensing that there are things they want to save, or they want to bring back, or they don't want to forget. One thing that you make it very easy for someone like me is that you're obsessively documenting everything. I mean, it's just been part of your culture from the beginning. You're obsessively photographing and documenting, so it makes it a little bit easier. That sense of creating value. I'm wondering, Paul, if I can talk to you about sacred spaces and maybe even pilgrimage. And again, it brings the religion. We're using some of the vocabulary that you can use in religion, but we're not talking about Christianity or Buddhism or so on and so forth, about a practice of religion.
Okay, thank you. This is tricky because I got a lot to say on this, and it was so difficult to say it all. I tried to say it in a paper, in an academic paper, and it was just rubbish. So I decided to write a book. So that's why I've turned the whole thesis into a book. So yeah, pilgrimage. Brian Glennie and I went and performed a pilgrimage yesterday to the TBS spot. I had a great time. And I said to Brian, like, I cannot leave Malmo without going to that place. Otherwise, I haven't really been to Malmo. That was like the way it felt. There is so much material out there. And there's, particularly when I've been speaking during my research and I've been interviewing people about this, and people are skate tourists, people are skate pilgrims. The bucket list, that's a beautiful way of describing it. People want to go to the Brooklyn Banks. People want to go to Wallenberg. Actually, I spot Rick McCrank in the audience, and the post-radical episode that looks at this kind of fetish of space. This is brilliant. If you haven't seen it, please watch it, because you hang out in San Francisco with Frank Goer, and Frank Goer keeps these pieces, like the Hubba Hideout, for example, and because it means so much to him. There's a kind of emotional content, and take that a little bit further, and it's not hard to get to spiritual content. So, I think that people have these places that they want to go, and they care about them. They're important because we spent so long looking at them. How do I connect that with religion? there's a bigger argument here. So taking the academic point of view, I understand religion to be a subset of culture. Okay, you can't have, in my opinion, because I'm not really religious, you cannot have religion without culture. It's a way of describing transcendence, community. It's a cultural field of communication. Why we've got to this point in discussion about skateboarding and why I believe it's becoming important is because I believe, like the post-radical series, is that skateboarding is no longer a subculture. It's probably fair to say that, you know, we were in the Olympics, there's giant sports companies involved, there's multi-million-dollar sponsorship, these giant skate parks that are getting built everywhere. And I think a lot of people then say, well, and I know Pollyana and I have had an interesting discussion about this already, but in my point of view, what's happened is that skateboarding is now a culture. Because it contains so many different types of people, so many different points of view. And if you've been listening to the talks over the last few days, you'll hear people say many different opinions about skateboarding, whether it's skateboarding is self-harm, skateboarding is self-help, whether people are talking about it as a collective pursuit or an individual pursuit. We recognize that skateboarding is very hard to talk about, in a sense, to define. It's easier to talk about subcultures and to define them because they are discrete and they have a boundary. What's happened with skateboarding is that I believe, my opinion is that skateboarding is now hybrid and it means many different things to many different people. And what happens, you know, when you see a culture, it's very hard to just essentialize a culture and say, that's what East Asian culture is like, that's what European culture is like. There's too many different types of people in it. Same is true of skateboarding now. We've got this global culture. What happens then with the kind of development or progress of a culture, and we recognize that we're a young culture, 60, 70 years old, is that people have these important fields of communication, be that place, be that media, which you can describe as text, rituals, okay? Skateboarding is so ritualistic. There's so much in skateboarding that we recognize about how you do stuff, what it means if you hold your board in a particular way or if you perform a trick in a particular way. We read that. And at the same time, we've also begun to have our own holidays, like a religion might have. So we have Go Skate Day, and even though that's not universally recognized, for example, as we discussed in another panel, and then pushing borders, everyone I speak to expects pushing borders to happen next year. It's like, it's a fait accompli. This is an annual event now. This is an annual thing for us. Yeah. So let's hope so. So yeah, I think in answering your question then, what I'm interested in talking about skateboarding as a religion is I'm really talking about what happens next in skateboarding, okay? Because people want to hold on to what is incredibly important to them. There is this heritage, this history. It's the biography of a lot of us. You know, you look at your life and your life is through skateboarding. What happens next? And okay, again, I'm going to be a bit provocative. Maybe this is a little bit too, yeah, okay. What I think happens next is that we start to establish cultural rights. You know, you start to say, well, if you recognize that we've got a claim to space like Southbank, then, well, what happens next? Like, do the logical next step, but then that means this is intangible heritage. It's related to culture. Therefore, you know, you're kind of not far away from recognizing that skateboarders deserve a holiday, that they deserve some kind of recognition, this kind of having this field of communication. And I think that could be the way in which we preserve skateboarding, is we recognize that it's no longer subcultural. It's our culture. And people don't challenge you if you say, oh, skateboarding culture. We say that very easily, but no one's really been very critical about it and tried to recognize how has it evolved and where is it going. But that's my take. This is where I think we are.
I think what you're saying about kind of it becoming so accepted now that we have to be critical, I completely agree. And I think this idea of romanticizing skateboard culture is something that is really potentially damaging for us. And I know we spoke about it a lot, Gustav, about, especially when public funds are involved, and this is something that we get heat for all the time, is that we spent ages writing fundraising applications exemplifying the benefits of skateboarding, whether it be physical well-being, mental well-being, community, a sense of belonging, a sense of placemaking, like the list goes on. But we are romanticizing it. We have a very biased opinion of what that space is. We skate at Southbank every day after work as a group of mates. We see some gnarly shit go down. I don't include that in that fundraising application. Like, no, but, you know, it can be a sketchy place. I've seen horrible things happen there. I don't include that in my articles. I sometimes do in like my research, but I wouldn't say that to the GLA.
Well, I think this is actually one of the main themes of the panel later on tonight, or this afternoon when we're talking about skate-friendly cities, how we've moved. Like once you have, like, skaters have been in a beggar's position a long time, asking to be included and feeling like, oh, we're being neglected in the city. When we do get spaces, that comes with responsibility. And it also means that how are those spaces? How do skaters behave? Are we inclusive, etc.? But we will be talking about that. I think it's interesting because now we're lost and spending a lot of time on a category discussion. Do we call it culture? Do we call it sport? What do we call it? I think the whole point is that human beings have invented categories for certain things that fit in them. And skateboarding's characteristic feature is that it transgresses categories, and it's an interface between anything human. You know, anything that you want to use that, or a prism. You know, you can step on a skateboard and then you choose what you do with it, and that's what's great about it. You know, you don't have to become an athlete. You don't have to do anything. You can choose to, you know, find art. You can choose to find all these other things, and people come into the skateboarding world because they realize that, okay, I really want to add this to skateboarding, and that's what's interesting about it. So, and same thing with the cultural heritage then. I mean, it's a chronology. We were saying that chronology will continue. And there's also other things like the DIY scene where you build things on the expectation that they will be torn down, and that is why you do it, because the process is the history and so on. So I think it's a healthy sign that we are lost in categorization. And I think that's just perfect for anything that has to do with skating.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree. And that kind of notion is it a subculture, is it not a subculture? Maybe it never was a singular subculture anyway. There's that kind of idea that it was this one thing then, and now it's many different things, but maybe it was always many different things. So one of the things that has really come across listening to everybody talk is we've talked lots about story making, like the stories we tell, the narratives. And as a kind of outsider looking in, there isn't the one story, and there isn't necessarily a hierarchy of stories. It's a kind of ecology of stories, a constantly shifting series of boundaries. And that's, to me, what makes it so fascinating, is that there are these constant things where contradictory things are true. And that seems to me to be a really valuable nimbleness that would be like really bad to lose.
Great. I totally get your points about categorization as well. I love that. And I agree wholeheartedly about the fact that skateboarding has got some unsavory elements, and sometimes we see it uncritically celebrated and it becomes a little bit tired. My argument would be like, well, culture isn't nice, okay? There's a lot of brutal things in culture. But I guess the kind of issue about preservation, in terms of like intangible cultural preservation, I spot within people and what they're concerned about. So the Leon 25 that we were talking about earlier, Ali Boulala, and of course Jaws, the issue with the Leon 25 is it was recently used in a Bayer Pharmaceuticals promotion video. And what they did, some of you might know this already, but what they actually did is they took the Leon 25
This is a stair set, big set of stairs in Lyon that someone tried to jump down, and it became an iconic maneuver in
So they
skateboarding.
took the measurements and they remade it in Los Angeles, not as a skatable structure. It was remade so people could hang out and have a cocktail party on it, and underneath it had opening doors where you could chill out and do yoga. The point of recreating
There
this,
is no hope.
it was branded as leaps of faith. And they were using the kind of fantastic achievement of Jaws and Ali Bilal to see this as an opportunity, a really creative, like human potential pushing issue to achieve. And they thought, okay, we can use that for our promotions, which is really interesting. The thing that I find really interesting about that is that we know, I said earlier that our spots are hidden in plain sight. Well, increasingly, they're not. People are finding out about them. And this is a really great example of what, some people, I'm not going to say that, okay. But, our kind of values and our culture getting co-opted in some way. And I think my response, my argument about, hey, well, maybe we're a culture, or maybe, we can think about how meaningful this is, because a lot of the people I've kind of spoken to are desperate to make it more meaningful in some way, to make it more niche to them. In some ways, it's holding on to some of the past, the relics, the memories, and I think in some ways it's trying to inflate or expand what skateboarding really is in terms of its meaning, and to really plug into that emotion.
But that's really interesting. I'm really interested in your story there, because you're from the Smithsonian and you're sitting here chairing a panel. What has your journey been into, this less categorizationable field?
Good word.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it's a long story, and we're running out of time. Thank goodness, right? We really want to get to the good questions. I think I stumbled into it. I'm a skate mom. I don't know if that has global significance in America. My kid skates, okay? Thank you. My kid skates. I've watched him skate since he was 4. I was the mom that took him, we're from Baltimore, and there wasn't a skate park there, so he's a street skater, and I would take him to places like the back, like a loading dock of some, I was that mom, and but I never felt that he was in danger. I liked his friends. I liked his peer group. As I was talking to Gustav, he was never bored. When you have a kid that has a passion, you have a happy kid. And but I got a lot of really negative feedback from other parents, because it was like the parenting Olympics. You know what I mean? Like, everybody was always trying to tell you how brilliant their child was, and they'd look at me like, "Am I worried that my son look around skates?" And I would say no. So with that, I was kind of preloaded. The software was preloaded. It was a very positive experience with skate. And I looked at Thrasher. I knew, and I looked at all the 411 videos, and I saw a lot of stuff that I was like, oh, okay. I'm not like, oh my God. The reversing and the going and learning tricks and stuff like that. And his posse used to just take frozen pizzas, and they'd have them on their, and skate from one house to the next. Whose mom isn't going to kick you out when you have this pizza in the microwave or something like that? So that's my memory of my kid. When I came to the Smithsonian, I was assigned a project, an art project, and one of the curators, a man from the White Mountain Apache community, had an interactive video installation called Four-Wheel War Pony. Thank you for actually knowing that. And Four-Wheel War Pony was the name of his skate brand. And when you think about it, the metaphor of the skateboard replacing the horse in traditional Native American or Indigenous or First Nation, however you want to say that term, was a really interesting story to tell. And I was so interested in it because, I liked skating. I didn't see it as being this really bad thing. And so I did an exhibition on Native American skateboard culture. And by that time, unfortunately, I'd lost my mind completely. I was all about skate. I realized that the Smithsonian had really nothing about skate. And so I used my powers for good. And I tried to get more skateboarding into the Smithsonian. And that's what I do now. There's no official curator of skateboard culture. We have a curator of sports. I work with her. That's at the American History Museum. Talk about categories. The Smithsonian is this big pie. And then we slice it, slice it, slice it. So there's Native American Museum, American History Museum, Natural History Museum, African American and Culture Museum. We have 19 different museums. So Native American Museum is my gig. I work with American History Museum. I'm trying to get as much skateboard history and culture into the Smithsonian because I think it tells stories that are not well known. I think it tells a really strong American narrative. I think it's unique in that it is completely youth-defined culture. It wasn't something that your elders taught you, and it was, in terms of like basket weaving. You didn't learn to skate because you watched your grandmother skate. Well, at this point, actually you could, okay? But back in the day, let's say, that famous back in the day that we talk about, the kids made it up. They made up the tricks. They made up what to do. And that's, if you're an academic, anthropologist, sociologist, that's a fascinating thing. You don't get that in your research career. So that's me, but we've run out of time.
What? I was just interested in what slices you've managed to squeeze skateboarding into.
Well, if there's a nook or a cranny, I'm gonna squeeze some skateboarding into it. I'm obsessed. So one thing that we did is that we don't have and many of you know this, we don't have a fund to buy skateboards. I can't go and go, well, I want one of these, and go on eBay and get one of those. What I do is try to meet skaters and try to educate myself about skateboard culture and history, and ask people that I think have really interesting stories if they would want to donate something. So we have skate decks and completes, and we have apparel, and I'm very proud of this, and I don't know why I'm so proud. We have a set of keys from the skate park of Tampa. We're not a holy grail, we're not Hall of Fame. I really like that these set of keys from the skate park of Tampa have a really great story. So we have about 300 total. We have periodicals, shoes, trophies. It's the story that I think I'm interested in, and I like the connections. For example, I'm getting, I hope, this graphic that Strangelove Skateboards, shout out to Strangelove Skateboards, just did, and it's a take on the whole Apollo 11 landing. We just did the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, if you believe the moon landing happened, because the whole Strangelove deck is about the hoax of the moon landing. So it takes that whole conspiracy theory that it was a hoax. So what I'm doing is I'm getting that deck, but I'm also going to put it next to the Apollo 11 spacesuit and the Apollo 11 module that we actually do have, and I'm fairly certain they were not recreated in LA for a yoga event. So these are the real things. So I think those connections the Smithsonian can make, because it has this incredible collection of other stuff, and I want skateboarding to fit in there.
Should we go to questions then?
We really need to go to questions.
Questions.
Pick them out. No, you go ahead. It's too big a job for me.
Oh, God. Oh, I get to pick. I'm going to go from the back, okay? You, white shirt in the back.
All the way over here.
Yeah, all the way there. I'm making you run.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Hi, I came today a little bit later, so I apologize if my question was already addressed in the beginning, so you can just skip it and stop me. Oh, yeah. Did you hear what I said? Or okay. As we're talking about the heritage spots and how the culture of skateboarding changes, and like a lot of new people coming in from different backgrounds, they're watching different videos and different. They're getting influenced by different aspects of skateboarding. What I personally find disturbing when I skate like any street spots, basically, is that not only people from younger generations, but dudes like in their 30s maybe, for some reason think of themselves as superior to like average people or like pedestrians that are walking there. And I was wondering what did the Love Park or does the Southbank has like some kind of code or means of educating the younger people, or like whatever people are skating there, and how do they treat pedestrians and people who just hang out there or just walk by? Because like, for example, I read and seen many interviews with Bobby Worrest, and I might be remembering it wrong, but he said that like if you're skating the Pulaski Park and like your deck, for example, shoots out and hits, I don't know, some lady in an ankle, you like get a warning. You do it another time, like you're out of there. So like you need to watch yourself, like be respectful to other people, and like it's basically your responsibility because like people they have no idea what you're doing there, and like generally they shouldn't know how your board is gonna, I don't know, where is it gonna go?
Yeah. So how do you create a a kind of how should skaters behave in order to merge with the general public?
Yeah, do you have like as older crews, do you have like some kind of code on, or do you educate people, or how do you approach this?
I think that'd be interesting to hear how it's been at Love Park. You know, how does it work with pedestrians and stuff?
Yeah, there was definitely an older crew when I was growing up, and they would make sure that you stayed in line with stuff like that. And it was a public park, and you weren't allowed to skateboard there, so you were already in the wrong. And the pedestrians, it's a circle. Everyone was walking like crazy. It isn't their job to know that you're even supposed to even be coming behind them. So, yeah, it was definitely policed by the older crew. At least that's what I felt when I was younger, when I was going there.
But you also had, weren't the skaters became a sort of social point of contact for homeless people and so on?
Yeah, it's almost like skateboarding's illegal there, drug dealing's illegal there. You kind of get put in the same category, so the pedestrians already look at you, the tourists already look at you like, what the hell are you doing here? Like I think they feel like more entitled than the skaters, which I guess they should, but.
I mean, at Southbank, we definitely try and teach the youngers to be more respectful. Again, this ties back to what we were saying about romanticizing and like, I mean, we always had the olders, people like Femi and Chewy, like, you know, that gets passed down, and it's the same now. I get really annoyed when the youngers get pissed off for pedestrians coming into the space, especially when it's raining and we're all like hiding from the rain and it's dry, and then pedestrians walk inside the space to keep out the rain, and the youngers like, fuck off, what are you doing, like getting your like shoe prints wet, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this was designed as a pedestrian space. This is a thoroughfare. So you have been given the privilege of having this space saved for mixed use. How can you then turn around and tell this pedestrian they can't come in here? And we do try and say that, and it's the same when we're hanging out by the river and some of the youngers are like, you know, catcalling girls, and we're like, stop fucking doing that. That's what we were talking about yesterday, allyship. Like, I think that is really important, especially at skate spots, when young people are, you know, in their mind, they're hitting on girls. They're at school and they're like, oh yeah, you got game, all this stuff. But actually, you're just like, you're being a dick, And I look like a dick because I'm sat right next to you. But yeah,
we will revisit this question as well in the Skate-Friendly Cities panel, where we're talking exactly about how skateboarders relate to public space. You know, once we're in the public realm as opposed to a skate park, what is our responsibility? So we will be getting right into that question for that panel as well.
But yeah, it's really important. 100%. That's a good question. Thank you.
Next question, Betsy, call it out.
All right, make it easy for you, Phil. Right there on your right, in front of you. All right, okay, let's go.
I intercepted.
Safe, Josh.
Thank you guys for all being here. This has been really interesting. I think that obviously the preservation of the Undercroft has been a first pretty much in the world in terms of bridging that gap between skateboarding and what makes skateboarding special in a certain place and getting people to understand that. And then Gustav, what you've done in Malmo and the things that you've accomplished here also in terms of skate-friendly cities are incredible. Are there plans to take that information and package it so that that can be spread and shared? Or what do you guys think the best ways are to approach doing that in other places in the world?
Well, we've already talked a lot about the fact that there's no one model fits all. That's something that we've been agreeing on quite a lot the last few days, is that every space is specific to its context, be that socially, economically, whatever. So there is no real one size fits all. And the academic forum was really interesting talking about this, like the risk of working with organizations that don't skateboard. But I think the common theme, and you know, anyone can challenge me on this, is just the need to build relationships and find the person behind the email address or the one face behind the organization. Like often, for instance, the mayor in London, like the mayor of London's Culture at Risk office, the guy we met in City Hall, he's just one guy. Like, he's not an office, he's just one guy. And when he's really sound, and when you can actually speak to them, you're like, oh, okay, cool, we can actually make some progress here. And you can, you know, just, like I was saying at Josh, actually, your thing at Innerskate, it's not that hard, like, it's quite simple. And I think that's one of the things I think we can all agree on is building relationships, it's having those conversations, and then ensuring that you, like I said, like comprehensively explain the value of that to other people. Anyone else want to?
Yeah.
I think I'd just
go on.
add to that, which is like to avoid the temptation of trying to do things, to think that tech will save you, to think that you can do things digitally, because there's like masses of stuff you can do, but it seems to me from watching Long Live Southbank that face-to-face conversation, whether it's with an individual or somebody walking past, is really, really important. So one of my misconceptions coming in to look at the project, I look at digital networks. I thought, oh, it's all going to be about Facebook and Instagram, and it isn't. It's about sitting at the table day in, day out, talking to people. It's about going, it's that face-to-face contact.
Wow. I completely agree. Yeah, I think it's like, if you look at the stories that we hear from other cities where they've had similar progress, like Leo in Bordeaux, who's going to be in the panel later as well, and our story here in Malmö, it's a story of relationships. And I think the real story, I mean, skaters, we tend to focus a lot on the city not giving us things because we care about this stuff. And we deserve stuff, you know. And the key cities that have succeeded in progressing are the ones that have shifted that focus to how can we show the city what they need so that we can get more things done. And to sort of step outside your own vision and be, well, we want granite blocks in this space. It would be great to be like, okay, what does the city need in order to put those blocks there? Well, maybe an event with like kids and, you know, sorry, that's a great thing to do. I don't mean to sound flippant about that. But yeah, so, and what we do see, exactly like you say, is that every city is different, and it's about finding those relationships. In terms of packaging that then, the package is not like about, oh, you approach the city this way. The package would be like, let's chart all the positive outcomes that skateboarding can have, and then see what in we can get through different relationships and having different strategies for that. Like, can you work through culture? Can you work through sports? Can you work through town planning? What's your in? What do you need to deliver as a skater in order to get that done? And it's more like a toolbox and potential strategies than a set plan, I think. But I think one way of packaging that is just to chart everyone's stories, everyone who's been successful with these things. Like Hull was a really interesting example. They had a massive plan to redo the town center, and the skaters managed to get in there, which meant that all of a sudden that really escalated the level of change that they could induce, because there was already massive projects going on. Or in Roskilde, outside Copenhagen, where there was a big water drainage project where the skaters managed to get in, and all of a sudden it was like a huge skate park with a water ditch and bowls at the bottom. There's no set forms, but if you know how to talk to the city in order to show what positive outcomes skateboarding can help them generate, then you're in a good place, I think. But this is kind of, now we're leaving cultural heritage panel and going into the cities in a way, but thanks.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, I get to pick again. Okay. Yes, you in the front row.
Awesome.
Let's give it to the girl in the front row. Yeah.
Hi. I think this is more to do like the colonization of skateboarders in space, and specifically with Love Park. I just want to know how you managed to acquire the granite, and specifically because it wasn't necessarily owned by skateboarders in the first place. It could have been taken by those that were, maybe homeless or whoever also acquired the space.
So the mayor in 2001, his name was, I don't know his first name. He was Governor Rendell. His son was a skateboarder, and he grew up, and he has all the ins and with the politicians. So pretty much it was his voice that he spoke for us to the city to allow them to let us take some of it, and it wasn't free. We had to pay for it all ourselves. It was, we had 1 day to do it. I don't know. It was pretty much truck rental, and they had to hire everything's union, so you had to hire union labor to operate the forklift. You couldn't just bring your own forklift, and it was an all-day process, moving granite from Love Park to a site not far from the city. And they got a lot of stuff, but it wasn't as much as I would like.
What was the attitude of the people demolishing at that time while you were doing that?
I think they took the day off. Yeah, no one was there. Yeah, they just let us have at it, and I think they might have one guy just overseeing the project.
And there's more left, right?
Yeah, there's more. You didn't take all of it.
Is that an answer? Let's see. Back left, there, sort of in the middle. Moe.
Hi. I have a question for Betsy, and I'm concerned. I'm conflicted about the institutionalization of skateboarding. I want to ask about how do you see it affecting skateboarding? Because you're taking objects that belong to like the skate, culture, and then you're putting them in the Smithsonian. And I'm considering like how will this affect the view of skateboarding from outside? Like how do you think this is going to affect, how are people going to be viewing these objects in the near future? Because you're institutionalizing this culture, and there's always questions about institutionalizing, the institution itself. How do you think this is going to affect skateboarding?
That's a really hard question. I don't know. I mean, I think if I could look into the future, I would be very rich, and I would be on an island somewhere. Let me give you a little context. I work at the Native American Museum. So we preserve Native American culture. You could say we institutionalize an indigenous culture, but our mission statement is to be able to break down stereotypes and tell history with different voices. And that's what we do. We do not present indigenous cultures as things of the past, but we present indigenous cultures as living cultures within America, within the Americas. The presentation of skateboard at the Native American Museum was very much a Native American living culture. It really broke down stereotypes. Many people came to me and said, Native people skate? And I would say, yes, they don't all live in teepees. I mean, we have this thing in our museum, it's like, it's not all teepees and feathers, right? I mean, it's hard for many Americans to see Native Americans as their peers, as their contemporary peers. We live amongst you, right? So skateboard culture at the Smithsonian has been presented as skateboard culture. The stories that we tell are usually biographical. If we have a skate deck and it's Tony Hawk's and it was given to him by his brother Steve, we talk about, we have Tony tell that story. I have not done a history of skateboarding exhibition at the Smithsonian. We are often asked for specific skate decks to be in other presentations. I think we had 2 skate decks featured from 2 women skaters in our recent women history book that the Smithsonian did. So I don't really know how to answer your question. I mean, the inherent evil of institutionalizing a culture, it's certainly there. And I think there are best practices and there are things you shouldn't do. I think I've tried to learn in terms of my work with the Native American community about who you give voice to. I think there's been a real change in museum curatorship. It used to be that you went to a museum, it was a very passive experience, and you looked at something, and then you read a label, and the label was, I always say, like, let me tell you. It's like, let me display my smartitude. There was always this anonymous smart voice that was coming at you, right? And making you kind of feel stupid, right? And I think museums are trying not to do that anymore. I think that their interpretation and context is allowing for much more community involvement. Did that answer your question?
Kind of.
All right, time for a couple more.
I just wanted to say, I don't know who had the comment. I was really fortunate enough to do a fellowship at the Smithsonian with Betsy and Jeff, who I know is probably somewhere at the back. And what I think Betsy missed in that commentary was also the existing program that goes beyond the museum itself, so the Interscape program, and all the interviews that you guys have collected and all the history that you guys have collected that isn't necessarily in a museum. It doesn't exist within the context of what we see as the museum. So there's all this incredible rich heritage that the Interscape program is kind of, I want to say collecting,
Thank you.
but it's not collecting.
No, I mean, the Smithsonian is research and public display. And one thing that really motivated me to get more skateboarding at the Smithsonian is when Andy Kessler died. And I don't know how many people knew Kessler, but Kessler was amazing. He was a core New York City guy. And when he died, his stories died with him. And I decided that this culture was so young and many of the participants were still alive that we needed to get their stories. So it is an archival. We do have hours, if not, days or weeks of interviews that we have that, we're keeping for researchers. So what we research is often different than what we present because we have very limited resources in terms of how much exhibition space you get. We also do public programs. which are outside the museum and go to different places around the world. InnoSkate was recently in London. Big shout out to Josh Freeberg, who's there, who was part of that. So I think we're doing what we can do, and we try to save stories, show stuff, and show a lot of skateboarding.
Can I just add to that? Because like, academia is an institution. We're constantly taking stuff in that way. And I think like we're slow, really, really slow, but those institutions are trying to change. So there's like an emphasis on stuff being open access, on presenting your research, not just in dry articles, but through films, through other ways. And there's also shifts in archiving. So I was saying places like Bishopsgate Archive, you can log your thing, but then it's almost like a library card. You can go back and get it out 2 years later if you decide you want that and you want to use it again. So there's a kind of, I think the boundary between kind of institutions and the world is becoming more porous, which is a good thing.
Alrighty.
How many more questions?
I think we got time for maybe one long one or two short ones.
All right, the person with the short question, so I can get two of you. Gosh. You with the pinkish shirt? Red.
Sorry. This is a question for the skaters, I think. When street spots become recognized by the city as a skate spot now, it also loses something, because if I'm filming a street park, I might not go to Svampen because now it's kind of a skate park. It used to be a street spot. What are your thoughts about that, like the process?
Really good point. I mean, this one project we're working on in London at the moment called Marshgate Terrace, and it's with the London Legacy Development Committee. And we're basing it on Stanyan skate spot in San Francisco, which is that one in Golden Gate Park, which is like a disused access road that the city gave. Anyway, we're quite conscious that we didn't, like, Adam Todd Hunter, the filmer for Palace, he's one of the architects that's working on the project, and we all were like, right, we want to make a spot that you can film at, that people want to like use for that exact same thing, like. And then, yeah, it's weird because it's like we always correct people that call Southbank a skate park. We're like, it's not a fucking skate park, it's a skate spot. But it's all semantics, and I'm tired of correcting people, so I just let it slide now. But it's like people are like, oh, well, when you built the quarter, it became a skate park, and then I'm getting some architectural theory about why it's not a skate park. But but it's always going to have these arguments about if it's a skate spot or not. But I mean, at the end of the day, like if it looks good in footage, then it looks good in footage. If you're like, you know, George Toland, shout out, he doesn't ever film at spots that have ever been skated, let alone our skate spots. So I think it's your integrity as a filmmaker to make that decision. And then if you're really picky about if it's one this or that, whatever. Like, I know, I respect the question. Like, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I agree, because when I went to Barcelona, I avoided one spot because they turned into a skate park. I don't know what it's called. And that's why I think this Love Park project here is going to be good, because it's not going to be a skate park. It's just going to be exactly what it was, just a small portion of it. And pedestrians will walk through, and it'll have everything that a public space will have. You just happen to be able to skateboard there.
Well, that's really good to hear. Well, I guess it has to do with intention as well. Like, what was the now the intention behind Love Park Space is different, because we're choosing to put it there as a skate park, and it has a different story. And if you take that to have different significance to you as a skater and a filmmaker, then that's a choice that you can make, obviously. But I also think it's, physically it's going to be the same. I mean, we're doing it to scale. But with Svampen, it's kind of different, because we designed those blocks to be. The story of Svampen is that it's a plaza or a square that was really good for skating, but there was some blocks there that chipped when you skated them, so they put skate stoppers on. Extremely frustrating for us working on the skateboarding project, but long story short, that's how it had to be through different tender reasons and so on. But what we did is we hosted an event there and put blocks in that would blend with the space that could then be left after the event. So we put the granite benches in, and they were designed to be skate friendly, but to look as if they were a natural part of the square. And we may or may not have succeeded, but the fact is that they are designed for skating. So that fact could stand as a reason to be like, no, this is a design space, it's not a found space. But then no one finds Svampen. You know, it's not like, oh shit, wow, no one saw this before. It's like the local meetup spot. So it's not, you don't skate that spot like, oh, I'm gonna carve my place, like I'll be the first, you know, to grind this, whatever. You're there to do like tech tricks and see if you know, that space already has characteristics of being a skate park and a chronology with what's been done, what lines haven't, you know, how you choose to skate the space. So I think if you were a filmer and someone had a different way of skating Svampen and did a line that required reinterpretation, then that would be legit footage. But you could say that, you know, just skating the blocks is a bit like, it didn't require anything, you know, like where's your thought process? But that's like being a choosy skater. And I think that's an individual decision, same as what you were saying. Yeah, yeah, you like it? Yeah, sick.
Quick comment on that. I think we're really lucky at the moment. We're spoiled because we've got skate parks, we've got street spots, we've got stealth parks, we've got DIY spots. There's just an unending number of things for us to skate. I like to try and play that game. You know, is it legit? Is it okay to skate here? The great thing is that gives us something to sort of complain about and sort of challenge each other on. So I don't think it's an issue. I think it's actually really exciting that there are so many different things for us to skate. So the other side of that is that cities do it in different ways. Some of them, you know, get more involved and some of them get less involved. So I don't see it as a problem.
All right, we've got time for one more.
Let's see. Middle row, dark hair, I guess just in front of you there. Yeah, the lady just in front of you. There you go.
Thank you. Nostalgia is often a way of, you know, reassuring ourselves with a narrative of the past that can sometimes limit our imagination of the future. Is there a sort of fixity to the way that you look at history that kind of feels a bit troubling to you? I mean, after all, history is constantly created in the present.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. So nostalgia is kind of traditionally seen as a kind, academically, and I think in our lives, is a way of kind of reassuring ourselves about the anxieties of the present by kind of constantly going back. And that can be really taken up particularly by kind of politicians in a kind of back to basics kind of way, which is really, really problematic. I think one of the things that I found really, really inspiring talking to kind of people involved in the Long Live Southbank campaign was they had a kind of different take on nostalgia. And they did use the word nostalgia sometimes, but kind of to preempt somebody else commenting on it. So there was a kind of take of using the past not to say something just about the past, but to reframe the present and the future in a different way. So, for example, they looked at Dennis Crompton and kind of the philosophy that went into that building, which is about the past. It's about a different era, a post-war era, a kind of coming out of that down and up into the 60s, a kind of radical way of thinking. And they situated themselves as kind of heirs to that past. But through looking at what's happening at the present in London, looking at the processes of gentrification, the way in which public space in London is being emptied out of everyday use. And so they used the past, and in some ways, what could be framed as a nostalgia about the past, to say something connected to the past, but quite radical and quite critical of the present in a different way. So I found that a really inspiring thing and something that's made me question some of those kind of academic narratives around nostalgia. Not that they're not true, but other things might be true too.
Brian, with that question, I'm really interested in your perspective on that, because in a sense you're like visiting some old things, but it has significance today, like with, you know, clothes and filming with an old camera and so on. Like why do that today?
I think because when we make these videos, we're aiming at the older audience. It could also educate the younger kids to look back and look at all the old footage and just try to adapt themselves to that. And I don't know. Yeah, it's a hard question.
I think the issue about nostalgia as being a bad thing is, I mean, I don't want to be mean about your question, but it's like, well, there's bad things about the future as well. And one thing that we've kind of highlighted here is that skateboarding is far from static. And, you know, this is what Pushing Borders is all about, is all the new things that are happening. So, yes, nostalgia could be problematic, the future can be problematic, and they can also be good things. So I think it's something really rich that you can learn from looking back at the past. I don't think that there is any, you know, I don't think it's any worse than any other thing that we might do culturally, you know, or in terms of sort of trying to celebrate skateboarding. So there's an awful lot of room for nostalgia. And the cool thing about nostalgia is that it's not the same anyway. You don't actually live in the past. You remember the past differently and you kind of bring it into the present. So it's always fluid and it's always moving at the same time. So that's my take.
One thing.
Yeah.
I think one thing to, sorry, can I speak to that? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
I'm also Southbank local.
Yeah, true.
Claiming it.
Legend.
But I think in terms of nostalgia, we've been visiting mental health issues this whole campaign, and I think nostalgia has a place in a narrative where stories we create connected to space and histories place the individual in a context that can be of extreme significance emotionally. And nostalgia perhaps is a self-indulgent emotion, sure. And perhaps it's the opposite of the sort of Buddhist letting go and accepting and so on. But I think with how individuals are, to have a connection to history and places and be able to feel nostalgic is a way of feeling significant. And I think that the histories that we create and then the spaces that we're talking about now that allow people who are disenfranchised from other histories to be part of a story of their own, like Stu, who never skated the little banks.
I do now.
You can still be part of that narrative because you've skated Southbank since, and you respect that, and it's part of, you see yourself in that story, and that means something to you. I think that's a good place for nostalgia to be. Then over the self-indulgent nostalgia that creates powers of the past, you know, where, oh, you can't skate this because we never did that here, whatever. That, of course, is negative. But I think a more dynamic understanding of also the positive sides of nostalgia is worthwhile to keep in mind at the same time.
Quickly to that, Nick, 'cause that's a really good point. And we always think that's really weird. Like me, Louis, Matt and George, like never ever skated there. And that's why I think we had so much energy to do it, because we were so excited about that possibility. That's all we'd known. So, you know, for years we were looking at the plans, like already planning out the lines that we were going to take. And it was like, right, like when it's finally done, I could do this thing. Like, and it was almost like we were really excited about the possibility of providing a platform for future cultures, for preparing another generation to emerge where they don't even know us or ever, like, we don't want people to know about Long and Southbank sometimes. Like, it's just like, the thing is, it's there, and that will create, you know, with the Section 106 agreement, you know, to be used in perpetuity forever, that is a possibility. It's like doing it because it could be done, especially catching Southbank Centre on the back foot, and like, that was the only chance that we could do it then. But yeah, it was weird that we never actually skated there, but we spent so many hours like watching the footage, like the Rob Ashby photos, like sometimes I always felt like I had skated it because of how many fucking photos I looked at. But yeah, I mean, it's open now. You should go there. It's fun. And selfishly, we were like, oh, nice, something new to skate, and it's dry.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Sorry to everyone who didn't get questions, but don't forget, you know, that's why people are sticking around. Be respectful. I'm sure everybody's going to want to get something to eat, but, you know, call to them, ask some more questions if you want. So thank you very much once again to our panel.